Welcome to Business Leader Breakthroughs, where we help unlock the potential in you, your teams, and your business. I'm your host, Ryan Castle, along with Dr. Mike Ashby. We'll share insights, experiences, and stories on achieving breakthrough success in business and life. To learn more, click the link in the episode show notes or go to thebreakthrough.co. Now let the breakthroughs begin. Hey Mike, welcome along to this episode of Business Leader Breakthroughs. How much chaos have you had in your day today?
Oh, today's been pretty calm, really. That's because I've just been here, just on my own, quietly, in my little cave. And then we only, all we have to worry about is the voices in my head telling me to clean the guns. Other than that.
It's what should we call this? Interesting would be the polite word about what's going on in the world right now. What would be, let's say the real word, and we might have to beep it out.
I was thinking about that. I was actually thinking the word is probably cluster beep.
I think it's a good one.
Omni cluster beep. Yeah, we can call it cluster shambles. That was the other thing it used to be. Oh no, omni shambles. That's what it was, wasn't it? Omni shambles cluster beep. Yeah, wow. I mean, you know how old I am, and I've seen the introduction of the bicycle, and I've never experienced anything like this. Just the sheer uncertainty. COVID for about a week or maybe a couple of weeks or maybe even a month, I was kind of thinking, if nobody can do anything, if everybody's at home, then does the economy just stop? I mean, that was existential, as we like to say nowadays. GFC that was just straight off a cliff. And I can remember people use the word surreal to say it was odd, but it really was surreal, that one. And then you'd have to go back to the kind of the fall of the wall, and the unthinkable was suddenly happening. But this is different. There doesn't seem to be any kind of resolution to it in sight other than political changes and stuff like that. And you used the phrase that people are basically back on their heels. And that's what we're seeing. People are just, what the hell? What's going to happen next?
Yeah. So I think it's the first time in my history I can recall corporates essentially refusing to give earnings forecasts to the stock market because they just have so little certainty about what is going to happen that they simply can't forecast it.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And then it compounds. I mean, I've been reading various stuff that's talking about what's next, and there's a view that the real pain is going to hit around about June, which is not that far away. Ports are already emptying, goods and supplies are being stockpiled and all around the world. It's like we're preparing to hit a wall, but we're not slowing down. It's crazy. It's crazy, which is massively challenging at all levels, right?
It is. So maybe if we turn that to how do business leaders cope with this? How do they lead their teams through this? And there's, so many parts of that equation that they just simply have no control over whatsoever. So, you've got such great knowledge in this, Mike, about how people can manage through uncertainty, how they manage stress levels. Can you lead us on some of the tips and tricks of how, firstly, leaders can lead themselves, and then how they might think about leading other people in their organization who are not only concerned about the business's performance, they're concerned about their own job, they're concerned about potentially their personal life and financial impact going on there. So plenty to dive into, but maybe start with the actual business leaders. How could they be thinking through this?
Well, I think one reflection is that they should get older, because as you get older, you realize that there's not much that really matters. It sort of helped me over the years separate out the things that really do matter. But there are some downsides to that too. I think you've hit on the first and most important thing, which is what you can control. And you really have to very deliberately let go of the idea that you can do anything about what's happening in the world, because you can't. There's what's happening in the world and what's happening in your head, and those two things are very different. And what's happening in your head is different from what's happening in the heads of people around, So if what happens, and that's, empirical, it's data, it's a thing that can be described. And then there's your reaction to it, and that comes from lots and lots of stuff in your makeup, in your system, if you like. So the first thing to do is to accept that the feeling that goes with looking at the world outside is purely internal. and it's purely yours, and it's purely a creation. So that's all to sort of letting go of the idea that you can influence what's happening. And some parts of us are geared towards thinking that if we worry about things a bit more, they'll get better. That is not true. We can think about things, but if we worry about them, so there's an emotional element to it, a fear element, which is what this is usually about. If there's a fear element to it, then mulling over stuff, repeating it, is just going to make things worse. You're just going to end up in a stress spiral. So point one, start from the proposition that you can't control that. And point two, that you can have some control over your response. And this really invites, what we talk about in our program and in our kind of, in our daily lives really, is the active mindset. And that's the pause, consider, choose. When you're feeling that overwhelm, you've got to stop. You've got to stop and ask yourself, what's going on? What is this inside me that is causing suddenly my jaw's clenched, I'm on the edge of my seat, my neck's gone up and my shoulders are up, all the signals that we know for ourselves, our stomachs are clenched, our breathing's gone short, etc. Look at that and go, time out for myself, a personal timeout, which is, this is my reaction. And then kind of, as they say these days, parse it, P-A-R-S-E, kind of pull it apart a bit, go into it and understand where it's coming from. And then you can kind of disconnect from it a little. And that's the response you want to choose. You want to consider, I can keep kind of running around like a headless chook. I can think about, this in a different way. I can reframe this and go, okay, I can't control for that. What are the things I can control for? And then, okay, I'm going to choose in this moment, I'm just going to decide that the worst isn't going to happen, because it usually doesn't. I'm not going to go, that's all right. I can ignore it, won't go away. I'm not going to feel anything about it. That doesn't work. Anything that involves fighting against these things, grieving, raging, any of those, arguing, kind of trying to make it, rationalize it away, wish it away, any of those things that deny the reality are not going to work. So the active mindset goes, none of that's going to work. I'm going to choose to accept this is the reality. That's all. Neither good nor bad. It just is. It just is. And once you've made that choice, then you can go, okay, now let's go about making some other choices. Does that make sense?
It does. And the famous quote of the Stoics of "this too shall pass" is a useful frame to think about. What's the context for us as leaders in our business? Because we have to control our own. I think control is a fair word. Control our own state, because it's important how we are turning up and showing up for our teams around us. Yep. And the image that came to mind for me was, unfortunately, battle related. Thinking back to trench warfare, and the last thing you would have wanted was your sergeant in the trenches running around with a headless chook going, "Oh my God, it's going to be a disaster. Everyone's going to die."
Yeah.
Which unfortunately in a lot of cases was true, and I don't in any way make light of the sacrifices that people made in those environments. But how could leaders think about not only what you're starting to suggest here, which is controlling their own internal state, but also having context and thinking about how they turn up for those around them?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And battle, and we don't like to think about it, but historically that is absolutely a human reality. And at times people have had to go to battle to defend their way of life. We've just come through our own memorial, day for our veterans, for our service people. And we can talk about I'm just going to go on a little rant here. We can talk about all the kind of things they do in that the armed forces do in peacetime, which is all great. But in the end, those people are prepared to put themselves in the line of fire. And it isn't a bad metaphor for what's going on now. It's not that people are shooting at us, but the world is certainly kind of barraging us with very, very threatening in some parts, loss of jobs, loss of incomes, loss of lifestyle, all those kinds of things, right? So how we stay calm under fire is a really important part of leadership. And I think the first thing is in our own heads and hearts, in our own kind of states, is yes, your point about this too shall pass. I think one of the things that's always helped me is to, if you like, legitimize my anxiety. And the way I've done that in the past is I've said, and this comes from Eckhart Tolle, he talks about this. This is how it feels to ... This is how it feels to be confronting an existential threat to our business. This is how it feels to be operating in a period of utter uncertainty. And then when you do that, it's part of that letting go bit. And that's important when you talk to the team, is to have that in your heart, which is this is how it feels. And when they're going, what's going to happen? Give me calm. And then the very first thing is to kind of settle them with that. Hey, look, understand that you're feeling not only uncertain, you're afraid. And inside yourself, this is how it feels. Let yourself feel that, because the threat is real. And then we get away from the kind of, oh, don't worry, everything will be fine. We don't, to continue the analogy of the sergeant in the trenches. We're not the general saying, tally ho, chaps, over the top, away we go. Oh, bugger, another million dead. We're not pretending, but we're also not giving into it either. So I think that's the very first thing, is legitimize there are many, many realities, because they're all in here. The leader's job is to name the reality for the team, for the organization. So there's this stuff coming at us, name the reality, which is the Stockdale paradox. These are the things that could happen to us and that we need to be ready for. It's okay to feel threatened, frightened, and confused. That's how it feels when this sort of stuff's going on. And then to move on to, how do we prepare ourselves to see the opportunity? And that's really about, how do we get ready to adapt? And adaptability is right at the heart of this. We were having this conversation yesterday, when we were talking with a client about the advanced leader program, and we were talking about, we don't want to do just resilience, because if you think of the rock in the water, the rock is resilient, right? The rock is, the water runs over it. But the rock doesn't move, the rock doesn't change. So we don't want to be just resilient. We actually want to be the water. We want to be moving in response to the stuff that's going on. And I thought that's a really good way of thinking about it, is how do we set ourselves up so that we can adapt quickly? Which means, in a business sense, it means first being quick to let go of what's not going to work in the new environment. That's the very first thing. And we've talked about this before, flogging dead horses, right? I think we're going to have some dead horses. So we have to be prepared to let that go. We have to be prepared to give something else a go. We have to be prepared to innovate. We have to be prepared to do that fast and fail fast without kind of fear. To do that, we really have to stretch our thinking, because what worked in ordinary times isn't going to work here. So we can't just do an extension or a version of what we've done. We need a new song. We can't keep doing that one double speed or change the chorus or whatever. We might need a new song completely. So that's what I think we need to, that's what we have to be very deliberate and intentional about, is, and again, active mindset, recognizing, okay, I'm hanging on to this product or this part of the market because it's been good for us, and actually it's not going to work. And we need to exit, and we need to exit fast and cost effectively. And we need to quickly find another. And maybe it's one that's been, that we've known, likely will have known about it and have a view about it, but not yet have a kind of plan of action or the proof point. So we've got to get in there and kind of find a path quickly. So to the leadership point, I think when leaders are doing that, there's a sense that they're giving to the team that we do have some control over our destiny here. We are not just going to get bombarded by events. We do have some paths to get out of the line of fire and find some havens that are going do something different for us. But, it's very intentional, very deliberate, very considered. A lot of brain, we're going to use a lot of brain power over this next little while.
Indeed. And we help leaders to think about their job is not to solve everything. A more valuable frame for a leader is to think about literally how can I lead a team of people that as a collective group can help solve something here. So an idea that came to mind or example was, we're sourcing 90% of our components out of China right now for our manufacturing. Okay, let's talk to our team and think about what could we do over the next 4 weeks to look at alternative sourcing. Where else could we go? How is there anyone locally that could manufacture for us? Is there a different scenario under which we could do it? And as the leader, you don't have to go and solve all that. Ask great quality questions, get your team on board, and then help them shape some things, a plan over a period of time, because we always feel more in control when we're following a plan, right?
Yeah,
rather than just running around doing the headless chicken thing that we discussed earlier.
Yeah. No, that's exactly
that's an important
right.
frame for leaders.
Yeah. And I think part of that is also, that's kind of how we manage crisis. We're really talking about crisis management here. And one of the principles of crisis management is that you immediately drop everything that doesn't relate to this existential moment you've got. And I always remember, we quote it in our house, liked it so much, the guy on way back, Law and Order, and it was Ted Hoffman, I think his name was. I Googled it recently to work out what it was. And there's a moment in the show where he walks into the office and he says to his assistant, cancel my afternoon. And I like that. Give yourself, so one of the things you need to do as a leader is cancel your afternoon. Get rid of the routine BAU, give yourself some time and headspace. I guess that's our refrain, isn't it? Give yourself some time and some headspace to think, to research, to talk with the team, to work out a path. Because you will, but only if you give it time and headspace. If you continue to run around headlessly, you won't, because you're not allowing your fine mind to get creative. Cancel your afternoon, spend the time thinking about, A, how do we defend ourselves? B, how do we move from here into another space? C, how do we, locate all those ideas and opportunities and then bring them into action. So, for those of us who are kind of right in the fire in the moment, cancel your afternoon.
And I would encourage the deployment of AI to help you in that afternoon. I feel like the days of just sitting with a blank piece of paper trying to figure it all out by yourself are well and truly gone. AI's ability to now present it with a set of circumstances, your unique elements of your business, how you trade, how impacts of scenario A and scenario B, just phenomenal. So yeah, absolutely cancel your afternoon and lock yourself in the room and utilize the power of AI to help you figure some of the stuff out. And it doesn't have all the answers, but boy, it'll get you down that plan a whole lot faster than just trying to figure it all out for yourself.
And I think it's a great point. And that's exactly what I was thinking about when the research, it was kind of, that's exactly what you and I would do. And what we've learned is that obviously the better the prompt, the better the output. But for businesses that are really facing direct impact, actually taking the time to describe your business and describe the impact that the tariffs or the follow-on or the supply chain, whatever it is, describing the impact of those, and then framing the question actually will help you think it through for yourself anyway. HI is the start point. And the more I that the H brings, the better the output from AI. We used to have this thing in our business where people could contact me and ask me any question they had, and I'd be available to kind of answer. A, people never asked. B, when they did, they would start with the question and then they go, actually, I've worked it out, just from running out the question. So I think that's really, that's a very practical thing that people can do, is to map out, describe themselves, describe the problem, describe the kind of solution that they're looking for, and give it to chat. And then just keep interrogating chat, correcting it, sorting it, amending it, until chat in its own memory has a very deep picture of you. Because the more it knows about you, and it'll tell you this, one of the tips I got from chat last night actually was, if you really want me to remember all this stuff, just tell me to commit this to my memory. I didn't know that. So I think do that, kind of feed chat everything you've got, all the relevant data, and it will do a job.
Yeah, with a side note of how much of your confidential data you want to share with chat, and there are ways to avoid chat putting that into the large language model, but that's just my little footnote.
Sure.
I think the place where we can really help people right now is we have co-authored an incredible book called The Active Manager. It really is a field guide to how you can enhance that human intelligence, but with really practical application of how you lead people.
Yep.
We are right now making that free as a resource to our listeners. So if people would like to get that, they just go to tbco.at/AM book for Active Manager book. And we'll make sure we put that link in the show notes. So alongside spending your afternoon with your cancelled meetings using AI to help, honestly, read some chapters of that book. It'll bring some really practical steps that you can use to lead people in this time of uncertainty.
I think you're right. There's enough in there for you to be able to finish your cancelled afternoon with a bit of an action plan about how you're going to lead. First off, how you're going to use this active mindset bit. Secondly, how you're going to keep creating time and headspace. And thirdly, how you're going to kind of run your team. You're going to know you are going to be better prepared, and you do need to do that. None of us can manage this 180-degree flip that we've got going on at the moment in our world. None of us can manage it from what we know to date. We've all got to find new tools and new ways of thinking to deal with it. So transform yourself first. And you're right, the Active Manager book is a really fast way of doing that. It's an easy read. It's deliberately not long because we don't believe in kind of long diatribes. And you'll go out of that room ready to lead.
And even if you only read the first chapter, which is all about the active mindset, Mike, which you've been talking about extensively today. So before you do anything, read that first chapter. It will give you a great mindset to approach the challenge in front.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Really appreciate your insights today. Some really practical tips for people to help them go through this environment that we're in. And again, we'll make sure we put the link to the Active Manager book in the show notes so people can access that. Thanks for today.
And look, really happy to help people, either comments on this, particularly via comments on this, or if you want to get in touch with us, our details are here. Happy just to talk through with people where they're at and what they can do with, and just, give some practical help, because we know that a lot of people are feeling very, very afraid at the moment. And just at a personal level, part of how we operate and who we are, if we can help, we will.
Love that. Nice way to end, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, mate. See you.